And welcome to News Central Studio, reaching you live from Lagos, Nigeria. I am Felicity Ezewike. The headlines at this hour. Muslim faithful across Africa joined the rest of the world to celebrate Eid al-Fitr. Ivorian Prime Minister admitted in Paris hospital for medical treatment. South Africa's local COVID-19 vaccine production receives major boost. I'll bring you details shortly. We begin in East Africa, Kenya, where the High Court has annulled the BBI referendum process, throwing the future of the initiative into uncertainty. A bench comprising 5 justices upheld the petitioner's case that the Constitution bears essential features on its basic structure that cannot be amended. The court held that the BBI Secretariat and Steering Committee failed to provide critical information to the public as outlined in the procedures to amend the Constitution through a popular initiative. The judges said the BBI Steering Committee unlawfully had no legal capacity to promote constitutional changes, and thus entire BBI process was done unconstitutionally. Still, we have joining us now, News Central East African correspondent Abdunnoor. Thank you very much for joining us on the news.
Thank you so much, Felicitas.
Reggae has been stopped in Kenya, or is it?
Indeed, it has been stopped. And even though they say the rhythm and the dancing moves were the only thing that could change, but today the reggae itself has been stopped in the historic ruling by the 5-bench judge, who have also announced that this is a presidential initiative and not a popular initiative as required by the Constitution, and those amendments, which have also cost so many influential politicians their political influences and rules, today seem to have been vindicated. And now it means that the former Prime Minister Raila Odinga and His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta will have a lot to reflect on and find another route for the amendments.
It's been more than 2 years since this process started. What did it entail?
This was popularly driven by the handshake, because we very know in 2007, Kenya suffered one of the worst post-election violence, which was largely driven by tribal clashes and indifferences, which also influenced Kenya's tribally formulated or established political setup. Therefore, the target of this was to try and end these political indifferences and violence and the recurrent political challenges by trying to give in some of the powers, separating some of the powers, additional seats of the prime ministers, distributing the resources and the powers. However, after the collection of signatures, more than 5 million Kenyans appended to the document, and a lot of processes. Until today's ruling, though, there are a lot of optimism about the document.
What has the reaction been so far since the ruling?
Well, as you will expect, for the majority of the political experts and some of the legal professionals, the Law Society of Kenya President Nelson Havi, who was also part of the activists who are opposed to the BBI's constitutionality, who are also present in court today, and some of the senators in the Kenya Senate and the National Assembly have given in their support for the ruling of the judges. And much of it, however, is that there are a lot of controversies surrounding not only the process, which has been ongoing for a while now, but we also have the Independent Election and Boundaries Commission, which has 2 commissioners instead of the 5 stated in the Constitution. Therefore, as it has been even before the process, on the political setup, those who are opposed to it from the beginning are celebrating the outcome of the ruling today, and those who are also supporting this document and the BBI process in its entirety are expressing optimism that they can find a path to try and bring reggae back, though it has been put to a hold today.
Yeah, but you talked about mostly the leadership. What about the ordinary man on the street? What are they saying?
Well, from the chambers of justice today, we've been told by the judges that the common man, because this document was not printed in the Swahili language, which is one of the official languages in Kenya and the national language, there was no way the common man was well informed even when appending to the signature to the document. Whereas the court has spoken for the common man, but even in the street, as we very know here in Kenya and in many parts of Africa, the common man is usually influenced by the political position or the political influences. We are yet to hear from the public, from the ordinary man about their reaction to this ruling, but the feelings, monitoring social media, the Kenyan Twitter sphere, the Facebook, still the people are divided. The common man who was opposed to it or who was supporting it are equally divided on the outcome of the ruling. Those who are against it are still maintaining their position. And the discussion, however, is what next for the BBI. It's no longer at what happens now.
So what next, really? Let me start with you.
Well, we are not aware until now what might follow, but of course, this has sent back everyone to the drawing board, whoever was opposed or supporting this BBI or the reggae itself.
Thank you very much, Abdinol, for talking to us. Right, still in the east of the continent, where severe hunger has hit southern Madagascar as communities witness an almost total disappearance of food sources, creating a full-blown nutrition emergency. People have resorted to desperate survival measures, such as eating locusts, raw red cactus, fruits, and wild leaves. For the first time ever, pockets of the highest acute food insecurity levels, IPC Phase 5 or catastrophe, have been recorded, signaling deepening hunger. WFP urgently needs $74 million over the next 6 months to provide life-saving food to those most vulnerable in southern Madagascar.
The malnutrition rates on average has gone over the past 3 months from 8 to 16% on average in all the districts. But in some districts, it has gone up to 27%. This is alarming. This is life-threatening. And whichever way you look at it, this is starvation happening before our eyes. We cannot allow this to continue. We need to do everything that we can to do that. WFP stands ready and is assisting people with the current available resources we have, which will run out in the next 2 months. We need donations now in order to be able to meet the needs over the next few months.
Mission in Somalia, AMISOM, is expected to remain in the country up to December 31st until the security situation is stabilized and the elections are held. The decision on the extension of the mandate of AMISOM troops was confirmed in a meeting that was held by the 15-member Committee on Peace and Security. This decision is a relief for Somalia, which has been relying on AMISOM troops to support its security operations since 2007. The 15-member Committee of the African Union Peace and Security Council include Kenya, Djibouti, Ethiopia, Egypt, Nigeria and Algeria and other countries. AMISOM troops in Somalia have had their mandate in the country extended every year to protect important facilities, support for government forces and fight against al-Shabaab. Now, the UN Humanitarian Coordinator in South Sudan, Alan Nodaho, has called for law enforcement along roads following the first killing of an aid worker in the country this year during an ambush in Budi, eastern Equatoria, South Sudan on Wednesday. The UN states that the aid worker was killed when assailants fired at a clearly marked humanitarian vehicle that was part of a team of non-governmental organizations and South Sudanese health workers traveling to a health facility. Allen said in a statement on Thursday that they are expressing shock at the violent act and sending condolences to the families and colleagues of the deceased. The incident marked the first killing of an aid worker in South Sudan in 2021. 9 aid workers were killed in 2020. Still in Eastern Africa, where Petra Diamonds has reached a settlement with 71 people at its Williamson mine in Tanzania who accused the firm of being responsible for widespread human rights violations, including beatings and detentions. Under terms of the settlement, Petra will pay $6 million in compensation. A London-based law firm sued Petra on behalf of claimants who say they suffered serious human rights abuses by security personnel employed or contracted by the Williamson diamond mine. 10 of the claims were brought by the families of those alleged to have been killed at the mine. The claims were issued in the High Court in London against Petra Diamonds Limited and its majority-owned Tanzanian subsidiary, Williamson Diamonds Limited, in February and July 2020. Now, let's talk about the killing of 5 people in a village in western Tillaberi region of Niger near the border with Mali. The attack has been confirmed as happened as the country celebrated the Eid al-Fitr holiday, marking the end of the Muslim fasting month of Ramadan. A statement from officials say the attack took place on Wednesday morning in the village of Fantio. The death toll is 5 dead and 2 seriously injured. A local source said the attack was carried out by terrorists who came on motorbikes. Tillaberi is located in a flashpoint tri-border region between Niger, Mali and Burkina Faso, the site of frequent bloody attacks by jihadist groups. Still on security, in the meantime, the Nigerian army says it killed 9 Boko Haram fighters who attempted to carry out a terror attack on the outskirts of Maiduguri, the capital of the northeastern state of Borno. Army spokesman Mohammed Yerima said troops recovered the Buffalo gun truck, 3 motorcycles, 3 Browning machine guns, a rocket-propelled gun and 4 AK-47 rifles from the insurgents.
Just as Nigeria's National Security Council approves new measures on tackling escalating insecurity, calamity was averted when troops of Operation Lafia Dole successfully repelled Boko Haram insurgent attacks in Maiduguri, chasing the terrorists out of the city. The insurgents had stormed the Mulai and Jidara areas of the state's capital at about 7 p.m. on Tuesday, just as Muslim faithfuls were breaking their Ramadan fast, setting houses on fire before the troops moved in and engaged them in a fierce gun battle. According to residents, the exchange of gunshots lasted for hours before the gallant soldiers were able to overcome the terrorists who had to flee from the town. An officer from the 7th Division located in Maiduguri said the shooting involved the use of heavy artillery to overcome the insurgents who were heavily armed with long-range explosives and gun tanks. Though no casualty figure could be ascertained, military helicopters were seen hovering around the town and the surroundings, while ambulances were also seen as the army carried out mop-up operations to make sure the insurgents did not have any hiding place in the town and to evacuate any injured soldier or civilians. A Catholic cleric charged the government to quickly find a lasting solution to the insecurity situation bothering the nation.
Nigeria is said to be the 3rd country most impacted by terrorism. We call on the government to do the needful in ensuring that terrorists are checkmated, criminals rounded up, bandits dismantled, and kidnappers put out of business.
Meanwhile, frustrated Nigerian senators call for a shutdown of the National Assembly over worsening insurgency.
Mr. President, the situation we found out in our country today is not irreversible. It is that the problem is that we have not been able to pay sufficient attention or take this matter seriously. Sri Lanka, Colombia, Israel, they've gone through this road and they overcame them. So we should not be ashamed to seek support and assistance of such countries to help us.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, if care is not taken, you and me will not come to these chambers very soon because it's just a matter of time. We are all here and we cannot sit down here and be doing lip service to the nation. We have to, whatever it takes, whatever we're going to do, the time is now. We must sit down and find a resolution to what is happening.
Despite the insecurity in the country, today is Eid al-Fitr, a day when Muslims celebrate the end of the holy month of Ramadan in Nigeria. Now, compared to last year, when most countries were on lockdown due to COVID-19, Muslims in Lagos were able to gather this year to celebrate. News Central's Bernard Akede put together this report from one of the celebration grounds.
Muslims in Lagos, Nigeria, joined other Muslims in Africa and the rest of the world in celebrating 1442 Eid al-Fitr. Eid al-Fitr marks the end of the holy month of Ramadan, the period of fasting in the Muslim calendar. Last year, Muslims in Lagos and many parts of the country were unable to gather due to COVID-19. With the lockdown restrictions largely eased this year, Muslims were allowed to gather but were instructed not to exceed 50% capacity of wherever they gathered. At the mosque in Dodan Barracks in Lagos, Nigeria's commercial capital, Muslims gathered to celebrate Eid while observing certain COVID restrictions. In his sermon, the Chief Imam of Lagos, Sulaiman Abunola, prayed for the souls of those who died of COVID-19 related illnesses. The Imam, who spoke in Arabic, Yoruba and English languages, urged all Muslims to have the fear of Allah in their dealings as exemplified in the month of Ramadan.
To be pious. What is Allah telling you? He said the objective and the statement, the vision statement of Ramadan, of Ibadah, is taqwa. Because if you don't have faith, you can't have taqwa. If you don't have the fear of Allah, nothing can work. That is what we are missing in our nation today.
Notable personalities at the Eid ground urged Muslims across the state and the country at large to be close to the Almighty Allah, be disciplined and be honest.
My message to Lagosians, to Nigerians, is that they will be close to God Almighty Allah, to be disciplined and to be honest. Pretense does not solve any problem. All the problems and challenges we are having in this country, with prayers, contribution, honest contribution of everybody, it will be a thing of the past.
Lagos State Police Command is fully ready to protect the life and property of everybody in Lagos. All those who want to create problem in Lagos, they should relocate.
So what is important? We need one, we need to pray for our country, we need to pray for our nation. We need to call on Allah to salvage our country and to heal us from COVID-19 because there are a lot of challenges in the land. And equally, we need to advise our people that we need to work together.
Nigerians are, however, charged to exemplify all the lessons learned in Ramadan for a just and balanced society. Bernard Akede, News Central.
Thank you, Bernard. Coming up still on NC Continental Prime News, President of the Republic of Congo appoints Anatoly Makusu as the country's Prime Minister. We'll bring you details of this story and more after the break. Good to know you're still with us. Now, let's tell you about the change of baton. Denis Sassou Nguesso, president of the Republic of Congo, has appointed Anatoly Makusu as the country's prime minister. A decree read on Wednesday evening by President Nguesso's chief of staff, General Florent Nsiba, stated that the new appointment was done to replace Clement Mwamba, who has been in office since 2016. Anatoly, who is 56 years old, previously served in the government of Congo-Brazzaville as Minister of Primary and Secondary Education from 2015 to 2021 and as the Minister of Youth and Civic Instruction from 2011 to 2016. The Republic of Congo's former Prime Minister, Clement Mwamba, handed in his resignation later as the country's Prime Minister on May 5 to the President. To North Africa now, where the Moroccan government spokesperson Said Amzazi has announced that elections into the House of Representatives will be held on September 8. Amzazi says provincial council elections will be held on September 21, while elections into the House of Councillors, the upper house of Parliament, are scheduled for October 5. The elections will be the third since a new constitution was adopted on July 1, 2011 amid the Arab Spring. In the constitution, the king ceded part of his power to the government and parliament to appease anti-government protests that toppled regimes in Tunisia, Egypt, and Libya. Officials of the Tunisian Red Crescent say at least 17 African migrants drowned in a shipwreck off Tunisia as they tried to cross the Mediterranean from Libya to Italy. The Tunisian Coast Guard had rescued two Nigerian women in waters off the southern town of Zaziz. Red Crescent official Monge Slim also said the ship started on Sunday from Zoya in Libya with 19 migrants on board. The United Nations said at least 300 people have perished in the central Mediterranean crossing this year while trying to get to Europe. The UN Refugee Agency, UNHCR, says fewer than 23,500 people have made it across the sea to Europe this year, with most new arrivals landing in Italy and Spain from Tunisia and Algeria. Gabon's President Ali Bongo Ondimba says the Central African country could join the Commonwealth during the upcoming summit in Kigali, Rwanda. He held talks with the Commonwealth Secretary General Patricia Scotland. Ondimba says the integration of Gabon into the Commonwealth would be a historical milestone. The president also met with Prince Charles, the Prince of Wales, to discuss environmental issues. The Commonwealth describes itself as an association of 54 countries with shared goals such as development, democracy and peace. It was initially for countries that had once been part of the British Empire, but today any country can be part of the Commonwealth. The last country that joined was Rwanda in 2009. Staying in Southern Africa, 3 sailors who had been kidnapped by terrorists have killed their abductors and found their way back to freedom. The militants invaded an island located near Makusu district, held hostage a group of displaced people, fishermen and 3 sailors who were waiting to be rescued to the city of Pemba. 4 of the kidnappers boarded a boat with some of the victims, including the sailors, and were heading for another district. The sailors pushed the terrorists into the sea and escaped, sailing to the island of Matemo. Numerous abductions are taking place in the islands where people wait for rescue opportunities to sail to Pemba. The Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Africa CDC, says the number of confirmed COVID-19 cases in Africa has reached 4,660,304 as of Thursday. The Africa CDC, the specialized healthcare agency of the African Union, said the death toll from the pandemic stands at over 125,000, while over 4.2 million patients across the continent have recovered from the disease. South Africa, Morocco, Tunisia, Ethiopia and Egypt are among the countries with the most cases in the continent. In terms of the number of cases, the Southern African region is the most affected area, followed by Northern Africa and Eastern African regions, while Central Africa is the least affected region in the continent. This is according to the Africa CDC. Still on updates. South African-born American biotech medical entrepreneur has announced a 3 billion rand investment towards vaccine development in South Africa. Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, founder of NatWorks, a network of healthcare, biotech and artificial intelligence startups based in California in the US, announced that he made this investment during a webinar hosted by the World Health Organization WHO this week. Dr. Soon-Shiong's other company, Immunity Bio, is reportedly already conducting vaccine trials in South Africa in a partnership with local vaccine producer BioVac. He says he has been in talks with the government. Professor Tulio de Oliveira of the KwaZulu-Natal Research Innovation and Sequencing Platform, as well as Dr. Glenda Gray of the SA Medical Research Council. Meanwhile, South Africa's cabinet has extended the country's national state of disaster by yet another month until June 15. The current state of disaster was meant to expire on Saturday, May 15, after it was extended in April. According to reports, the cabinet says the extension is within the terms of Section 27 of the Disaster Management Act, following its meetings over the country's COVID-19 response and vaccine rollout program. This comes a day after Health Minister Dr. Zweli Mkhize raised concern over the possibility of the country entering its third wave of infections despite phase 2 of the vaccination program due to kick off on Monday, May 17. The country has thus far recorded over 1 million cases of the coronavirus and 55,040 deaths. Let's go to Nigeria, that's in West Africa. The Center for Disease Control there, NCDC, reported one more death in the past 24 hours, bringing the total number of deaths from the disease in Nigeria to 2,066. The center also reported 44 new cases of the virus, bringing the total number of infections in the country to 165,558. The new cases were reported in 4 states, with Lagos having 28 cases and Rivers 14. Akwa Ibom and Ekiti states reported 1 case each. According to the Public Health Agency, the country's active cases stand at 7,092. In North Africa, the Tunisian government has decided to ease a series of COVID-19 restrictions from May 14 until June 6. Government spokeswoman Hasna Ben Slimani announced this at a press conference. Ben Slimani says travel between all Tunisian governorates will resume from May 14 at 5 a.m. local time, while places of worship and malls will reopen from May 16. She adds that classes in primary and secondary schools will resume on May 17, while classes in universities will resume on May 19. The government spokeswoman says mandatory quarantine will be applied to incoming passengers and high-risk areas will be condoned off. Still ahead on the news, United Nations Secretary General is calling for commitment to maintain international peace. We'll bring you details of this and more when we return. Stay with us. Good to know you're still with us. Now, let's tell you about the UN's call for international peace. The Secretary General's Special Envoy for Yemen, Martin Griffiths, says the longer the Marib offensive goes on, the greater the risk to Yemen's broader stability and social cohesion. Griffiths said the Marib campaign, which began over a year ago, has every chance of leading to the transfer of conflicts to increase in other areas of Yemen, including those which have so far remained mercifully far from the main threats of the theater, of conflict. The humanitarian official called for a nationwide ceasefire.
The longer the Marib offensive goes on, the greater the risks to Yemen's broader stability and social cohesion. And indeed, it has every chance of leading to the transfer of conflict to increase in other areas of Yemen, including those which so far have remained mercifully far from the main theatres of conflict. Yemen is an unstable country, easily destabilized. I cannot re-emphasize enough, and I know I have done it often before in this chamber, what is at stake in Marib. Ansar Allah's offensive, which has been ongoing for more than a year, has caused an astonishing loss of life, including children who have been mercilessly thrown into the battle. Internally displaced persons who have sought refuge in Marib continue to live in fear for their lives and further displacement.
25,000 people have fled the fighting so far, but if the fighting doesn't stop, aid agencies fear up to 385,000 could be displaced in the coming months. And the fighting in Marib has also fueled escalations in other places, including Hajar, Udaydah and Taiz, and those too are harming civilians. With millions of people on the brink of starvation and COVID sweeping the country, more violence is the last thing Yemen needs. What we need right now is a nationwide ceasefire.
Still talking international peace. Following his meeting with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, Secretary General Antonio Guterres says international law and a commitment to dialogue are more important than ever to maintain international peace and security, protect the health, welfare and dignity of people around the world, and guide collective action. Speaking to reporters flanked by Lavrov, Guterres said trust is an essential prerequisite for collective action, but it has been eroded by growing divisions. He says the United Nations is totally committed to revitalizing the Quartet and to promote all kinds of dialogue by the parties and by other key actors that can be supportive of all the efforts necessary for de-escalation. We will go on a short break, and when we return, Tolulope Adeleru Balogu will be here with business stories. Stay with us.
Welcome to Business on NC Continental Prime. My name is Tolulope Adeleru Balogun. China and Tanzania have signed an agreement to improve economic and technical cooperation and enhance bilateral friendship. The signing took place in the commercial capital Dar es Salaam. The Chinese ambassador to Tanzania, Wang Chi, and Tanzania's permanent secretary in the Ministry of Finance and Planning, Emmanuel Tutuba, represented their governments. Now, according to the agreement, the Chinese government will provide new aid for the Tanzanian mainland, which will be utilized in the construction of projects negotiated and approved by the two governments. Tutuba said that the government of Tanzania will take all necessary measures to ensure successful implementation of the projects under this grant in order to achieve the intended objectives. On her part, the Chinese envoy said the agreement is a concrete step from the Chinese side to enhance the friendship between China and Tanzania and to promote bilateral economic and technical cooperation. Wang further added that China will continue to offer its utmost support to Tanzania. Kenya's Safaricom has recorded a flat growth in the financial year ending March 2021, despite the tough economic conditions triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, during this period, Safaricom enabled Kenyans to reduce the impact of the pandemic by waiving fees for transactions below 1,000 Kenyan shillings. This saw free transactions worth 4.4 billion Kenyan shillings being processed. Service revenue recorded a marginal decline of 0.3% to close at 250.35 billion Kenyan shillings, driven by double-digit growth in the mobile data business, which grew by 11.5% year-on-year to 44.79 billion Kenyan shillings. However, M-Pesa and voice revenue declined marginally, with M-Pesa recording a 2.1% drop year-on-year to 82.64 billion Kenyan shillings, and voice dropping by 4.6% to register a revenue of 82.55 billion Kenyan shillings. The African Development Bank Group has cleared about $413 million in arrears on loans owed by Sudan following the approval of the proposal by the board of directors. This will enable the country to assess new financing. The clearance of Sudan's arrears was aided by the United Kingdom's bridge financing of $208 million, Sweden's grant financing of about $4.2 million, and the Republic of Ireland's commitment to providing 150,000 euros towards Sudan's future debt service. Consequently, the bank lifted sanctions on Sudan and is providing a policy-based operation to the country as part of the Continental lender's re-engagement with Sudan to complement its ongoing operations. The AFDB's current portfolio in Sudan comprises 19 operations for a total commitment of about $600 million, spread across sectors like agriculture, water and sanitation, social and energy, and the private sector. African Airlines cargo demand in March increased by 24.6% compared to the same month in 2019, which is the strongest of all regions. This is attributed to the robust expansion on the Asia-Africa trade lanes that contributed to the strong growth. The International Air Transport Association also released March 2021 data for global air cargo markets, showing that air cargo demand continued to outperform pre-COVID levels, with demand up by 4.4%. Global capacity continued to recover in March, up by 5.6% compared to the previous month. Despite this, capacity remains 11.7% below pre-COVID-19 levels due to the ongoing grounding of passenger aircraft. IATA's Director General Willie Walsh observed that amid the demand spike, airlines are taking all measures to find the needed capacity, and that is also a bright spot for aviation. The aviation sector was decimated by the COVID-19 pandemic, but with the industry adopting air cargo innovations, it is expected that this will help drive long-term efficiency and recovery. We spoke to Tony Ukachukwu, the CEO of Aviators Africa, on this and why more carriers are starting in Nigeria.
Proliferation of more airlines into the space will be good for the consumers, but it will be bad business for the carriers because there'll be very sharp competition trying to compete for the little amount of passengers that are flying. So what we'll see in the long term is that there'll not be sustainability of this influx, because we hear about 23 airlines are trying to get their AOC in this small market. So we shouldn't look at the size of our population, but rather we should look at the number of those that fly by air, which basically is government, is business travel, and those are government and contractors. So if you look at the numbers, less than 10 million, and you have 23 airlines coming on board perhaps between now and the next 2 years, I don't see how that is sustainable. So basically, it's a big problem, assessing forex for the domestic carriers. As you find, the capacity had really shrunk, and the air carriers in Nigeria are having issues with their schedules and operations where they don't have capacity because most of their aircraft are abroad for maintenance, and they don't have access to forex to pay for this and to pay for parts as well. So what you see is that the capacity in Nigeria has shrunk, and passengers are being frustrated because airlines don't have enough, the aircraft on ground to be able to elevate them to their various destinations. So this is the lack of access to forest, the lack of access to forest, of course, is impeding majorly on the domestic market or aviation in general. Of course, you know that aviation is a dollar-denominated market, and so without access to forex, it's going to impede, greatly on the performance and operations of air carriers in Nigeria.
South African growth indicators for April saw the highest and fastest growth on record, signaling a strong economic bounce back to pre-COVID levels, according to the BankServe Africa Economic Transactions Index, BETI, for April. Now, BankServe Africa is an automated clearinghouse located in Johannesburg, South Africa, and operates both nationally and across the continent. The index increased by 25.9% year-on-year in real terms, boosted by current higher commodity prices. The headline index is a reflection of the economy's recorded changes annually. However, with the lockdown impact from April 2020 distorting the numbers somewhat, the short-term variations were important to observe, according to BankServe, and with caution. Economist Mike Schulzer and BankServe's head of stakeholder engagement, Shagar Nadeau, said that while the index was encouraging as it signaled massive economic recovery to a more normal pre-COVID state over the past year, true growth remains elusive. And that's it on business right here on NC Continental Prime. My name is Solulakwe Adeleru Balogun. It's back to the news.
And Jamie Yangu tonight will take you to South Africa, where the arts community is reeling from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. Let's see what this community is doing to assist themselves during this time.
In the heart of Johannesburg's bustling central business district is an enclave for artists who have found themselves battling to keep their creative juices flowing. As the coronavirus pandemic spread and cities around the world shut down, many artists face the prospect of having to close shop. This building, which was once a factory, has turned into a beacon of light and has offered a sense of community in one of the loneliest periods in human history. Ngobeni is one of the August House artists. Initially, he thought lockdown would be the end of his career.
When we started in the lockdown, it was challenging because of our spirit. My spirit was down, so the energy was down, So in terms of doing the work, it was hard for me. I decided that, in order to continue to work, I need to spend my time or the lockdown period in my studio. So since we started, I was in the studio. Other people decided to stay, and then we'll share whatever, the knowledge, or we'll continue to share the experience.
With several floors and private studios, this building is just what artists need in a time of distress.
So obviously when the pandemic hit in South Africa, we went into an immediate hard lockdown that was much longer than anyone anticipated. What that meant for the artists was that all of their upcoming exhibitions were cancelled, and then subsequent exhibitions were cancelled because gatherings were made complicated by numbers. Galleries weren't quite sure how to deal with COVID restrictions. What also people don't really realize about artists is that for the most part they work by themselves in their studios. So them in and of themselves are not a COVID risk. They could easily come into the studios here, lock their door, take their mask off and work very comfortably. So quite quickly, sort of from July, once we were allowed to move around more, we started to encourage the artists to come back. Also because the artists can't exhibit what they don't have and they can't sell what isn't finished. Being at home was terminally frustrating because all of their stuff was at the office, and most artists have this unbelievable desire to create, and when you tell them that they can't do that, it kind of kills their soul a little bit.
Some artists have said the support of this artist community has helped them to try new things. Percy Maimela was one of those who was unsure how he would sell his artwork without the usual gathering events. The lockdown gave him a push in the direction of social media.
And I think I've also managed to find my niche on the social media and how I can sell my work. So that's how, if it wasn't for COVID, I don't think I would have thought about doing it. So because I was locked in the studio for a while, having no one to speak to, obviously social media is the only thing that you can communicate via.
Hallett says the artist collective had to think outside of the box to offer its residents support.
Selling work is their bread and butter, so we spend quite a bit of time trying to work out panel discussions, online exhibitions, whatever we could kind of work out to do for them. We don't just view ourselves as a building that has artists in, but a building that tries to work towards the betterment of those artists and the betterment of their careers.
As the world considers ways to assimilate to a new normal, those who live and work at August House realize that the lessons they've learned since the start of the pandemic will remain with them forever. For Jamiangu, Diane Hawker, News Central Television.
Some creativity even amidst a pandemic. For some sports now, we're joined by Udoka Njoka. Udoka, how are you?
I'm very well. I'm ready to give you the very up-to-date news on stories breaking across the world of sports.
What's the latest?
All right, for sports, former Egypt national and Valencia manager Hector Cooper has been appointed by the DR Congo to be their head coach. Now, DR Congo failed to qualify for the 2021 Africa Cup of Nations finals for the first time since 2012 under former head coach Christian Nsengi Biembe. But they now prepare ahead of the World Cup for qualifiers in September and have decided to appoint former Egypt national team head coach Hector Cooper. The 65-year-old was in charge of the Pharaohs between 2015 and 2018 and then qualified them for the 2017 AFCON final and 2018 World Cup. DR Congo are drawn against Benin, Madagascar and Tanzania in World Cup qualifying, with the first game set to take place next September against Benin Republic. Going over to some COVID-19 restrictions now, Romelu Lukaku has been fined along with 3 Inter Milan teammates after a party celebrating the Belgium forward's his birthday, which broke COVID-19 restrictions. Lukaku, Achraf Hakimi, Ivan Perisic and Ashley Young were among a group of 24 people celebrating his 28th birthday in a Milan hotel after Inter's 3-1 league win over Roma. And police were called, with all present receiving fines for breaking coronavirus rules. According to Lukaku's entourage, the former Manchester United forward went out with friends but had not organized the party. Lukaku scored the final goal against Roma to bring his tally to 22 in the league this season, 6 goals behind Cristiano Ronaldo. And in the English Premier League, the Premier League has agreed to extend its big money domestic television deals until 2024-2025 in a move it says will provide security and continuity in English football. And league chiefs invoked exceptional and compelling reasons based on the COVID-19 impact to gain government permission to renew its existing rights deals without the need for a tender process. Now, the 3-year renewal is thought to be worth almost £5 billion, the same value as the current contract for the identical duration that runs through to the end of the 2021-2022 campaign. In a statement, the league said the UK renewals for the next broadcast cycle from seasons 2022 to 2023 to the season 2024 to 2025 will be concluded at the same overall value as the current arrangements between the Premier League and its broadcast partners. Moving over to some athletics now. Athletics Kenya has revealed that the national trials for the forthcoming Tokyo Olympic Games will be through invitation. Now, Director for Competitions, Paul Mutui disclosed on Wednesday that the athletes will be invited, and there will be those ones who will have attained the qualifying standards and the probables. Kenya has been forced to focus on the trials and perhaps the Diamond League, the World Athletics Continental Gold Tour, and World Athletics Challenge, the events to try to have more athletes attain the qualifying standards for the Tokyo Games. In a related development, the Africa Senior Athletics Championships that had been deferred from the 1st of June to the 5th of June to the 24th to the 28th in Algiers was postponed once more on Wednesday. And the Continental event was to act as the last qualifying opportunity for those who will not have attained the Olympic mark. And in tennis, world number 1 Ashley Barty set up an intriguing quarterfinal against American teenager Coco Gauff at the Italian Open. Now, the Australian Ashley Barty beat Russia's Veronika Kudermetova 6-3, 6-3, while Gauff earned a 7-5, 6-3 win over Arina Sabalenka, who won last week's event in Madrid. Coco Gauff, widely tipped for a bright future after a high-profile win, has never played Barty in singles before. It is the 4th quarterfinal of the year for Gauff, who rose to prominence with her stunning run to the 4th round of Wimbledon in 2019 as a 15-year-old. Now, the victory over world number 4, Sabalenka, was the teenager's second over a top 5 player and comes against someone who is in good form on clay, with the Belarusian having beaten Barty in last week's Madrid final. And that's a wrap on Sports Update. I hand over back to Felicity Ezewike.
Thank you very much, Udoka, for all the latest stories. All right, let's tell you what to expect from other parts of the continent tomorrow, here as regards temperature readings from our weather desk. And that's all the news at this hour. But before we go, here's a quick reminder of our top stories. Muslim faithful across Africa joined the rest of the world to celebrate Eid al-Fitr. Ivorian Prime Minister admitted in Paris Medical Hospital for medical treatment. South Africa's local COVID-19 vaccine production receives major boost. To follow us on social media, we are at News Central TV. You can download our mobile app on App Store or Play Store. You can also watch us live on Star Times channel 274, Alvo TV channel 23, and of course on YouTube. Many thanks as always for watching. My name is Felicity Ezewike, and Eid Mubarak to all of you.